children, once again I meet you to discuss another important paper that will help you to face your O-level exam successfully. This is part B essay paper. Right. We'll move to the first question, children. Please go through the diagrams given in the first question carefully. Here, the diagrams show some parts related to the nervous system as W, X, Y and Z. When you observe these diagrams, children, you should be able to understand that W represents a certain action related to the nervous system, right? It is familiar to you, I know that. And X, Y, Z represent some types of neurons present in the nervous system. We'll see the questions one by one. First question. What is the functional unit of the nervous system? Children, you know that the functional unit of the nervous system is the reflex arc. You know what the reflex arc is, right? Before talk about reflex arc, just try to remind reflex actions that we have learned. What is a reflex action? Reflex action is an autonomic response, quick response to a certain stimuli. Autonomic, quick response to a certain stimuli. Like taking the hand away quickly when the hand is touched with a hot object, or taking the leg away, lifting the leg quickly up when a thorn is stick to the leg. So these actions are the examples for reflex actions. So the path in the nervous system that the reflex action travels is called the reflex arc. Out of X, Y, Z and W, children, what represents the reflex arc? Reflex arc is represented by the letter W diagram. You can write W or you can write reflex arc. Next question. Name the structure which acts as B out of X, Y, Z. Here, children, where is B? B is there in the reflex arc given in the corner, right? Just observe carefully the reflex arc. There are 3 neurons given as A, B, C. Neuron A is starting from the receptor. You know that receptors are one sensory organs which receive stimuli from environment. Here the receptor can be the skin or the leg or eye or nose or anything. The neuron which attached to the receptor that carries the impulses towards the central nervous system is the sensory neuron. A here must be the sensory neuron. And the C neuron is connected with the muscle or the effector. Therefore, C must be the motor neuron. Then B, that cell body lies in the spinal cord or the central nervous system, must be the interneuron. Then out of X, Y, Z, which is the interneuron, children? Interneuron is Z. Z here. Here you can see, children, Z is the interneuron, X must be the motor neuron and Y must be the sensory neuron. Next question. Neuron which transmits impulses to the central nervous system from receptors. As I told you earlier, sensory neurons transmit impulses from receptors to the central nervous system. Therefore, you have to select here sensory neuron out of X, Y, Z. Then sensory neuron is Y. Y here. Next question. Copy and complete the following table regarding the types of muscle tissues, muscular tissues in the organs given. Here, what are the two organs given, children? Heart and stomach. You know that only type of muscle tissue available in our heart is cardiac muscle tissue. In the stomach or in the wall of the digestive tract, inside the stomach even, smooth muscle tissue is available. Then we have to check whether these given characteristic features are available for the cardiac muscles in the heart and smooth muscle tissue in the stomach. We'll go one by one. Take heart first. The cells are uninucleated? Yes. Cardiac muscle tissue consists of the cells with uninucleus, only one single nucleus. Cardiac muscle tissue is striated. And is it voluntary, children? No. Cardiac muscle tissue functions involuntarily. This is not available. And branch cells, yes. Cardiac muscle cells are branched. This is yes. Then go to the next type, smooth muscle tissue found in the stomach. Uninucleated? Yes. Right? Striated? No. No. Smooth muscle tissue is not striated. Voluntary? No. It is not voluntary. Smooth muscle tissues too function involuntarily. Branch cells? No. Branch cells are not branched in smooth muscle tissue. Right, children? Okay. Then we'll move to the next question. Based on the same table, same tissues, which of the above organs has muscles which never fatigue? Heart is the answer, children, because we know that cardiac muscles never fatigue. They function, they work before the heart muscles start their working before you were born, children. You know that. So, till the end, they work continuously. They never fatigue. Right. Then the answer is heart. Name another organ which has the type of muscle tissue found in the stomach. I told you the type of muscle tissue found in the stomach is smooth muscle tissue. Then what are the other places in the body, other organs that smooth muscles found? In the blood vessels, wall of blood vessels, in urinary bladder, in other parts of the digestive tract. In all these places, smooth muscle tissues are found. Okay. You can write any one answer out of the three given. Then part C of the same fifth question. A chart showing the regulation of blood glucose level in our body is given here. Here you can see, children, when the normal glucose level, blood glucose level goes up, a certain hormone called X is secreted. When the normal blood glucose level goes down, another hormone called Y is secreted. Children, do you know the normal blood glucose level of a healthy person, right? In blood of a healthy person, it is 90 milligram per 100 cubic centimeter of blood. 90 milligrams, right? If it increases more than that, the hormone called insulin is produced. Where this insulin is produced, children? There's an organ in our body called pancreas. Inside the pancreas, there is a particular specific structure called islets of Langerhans. In the islets of Langerhans, there are two types of cells called beta cells and alpha cells. This particular insulin hormone is produced in beta cells of pancreas. Okay. Then what's the function of insulin? Because of the action of insulin hormone, additional blood glucose is converted to glycogen and stored in the liver. Thereby, glucose level can be brought back to the normal state. Okay. Then what's this hormone? Now the hormone X is insulin and the hormone Y here is glucagon. Glucagon hormone 2 produces inside the pancreas alpha cells of the islets of Langerhans. Due to the action of glucagon, this secretes normally when the blood glucose level drops than the normal level. Due to the action of glucagon, stored glycogen in the liver is converted to glucose and add to blood. Then the blood glucose level can be brought to the normal level. Okay, right. Then name the gland which secretes X and Y. I told you what's the gland? Pancreas. And its location. Where this pancreas is located in our body, children? Let me show you that. You know that this is stomach and this is duodenum, and here's large intestine, some like that. And this particular pancreas is there just below stomach, just below the stomach near the bend of duodenum and just above the large intestine. Right, see the answer for this. The name of the organ pancreas, gland is pancreas, at the bend of the duodenum between stomach and the large intestine. Name the disease due to lack of the hormone X. Children, what is the disease occurred in our body when there's no enough insulin is secreted? Diabetics. Disease is diabetics, right? When there's no enough insulin is secreted, then there is no way to control additional excess blood glucose in the person. Then glucose released from the body through urine. This condition is called diabetic. Right, okay. Move to the next question. Write the function of each hormone X and Y in regulation of blood glucose level, children. As I told you, X is insulin. X convert excess glucose into glycogen when blood glucose level increases than the normal level. Y is glucagon. This glucagon hormone converts stored glycogen back to glucose when the blood glucose level drops, decreases than the normal blood glucose level. Right. Then these are the functions performed by X and Y. Then move to the next part. State whether secretion of ADH increases or decreases in the following instances. When the water level of blood goes up. When the water level is high, when the water level of blood goes up, ADH concentration decreases. When the water level of blood goes down, ADH concentration increases. You know children, ADH is secreted by pituitary gland, right? Then actually what happens when the ADH hormone is increases, when the ADH concentration increases in the blood, then this is affected to the nephrons of our kidney children, right? When the ADH level in blood increases, it gives a message to our nephrons in kidneys to increase reabsorption. Selective reabsorption volume is increased due to this. Then urine output decreases and thereby the body tries to retain more water in the body. Then go to the next question. When the water level goes down, which process in nephron helps regulation? As I told you, selective reabsorption, or you can write only reabsorption also. What is the defect occurring in pelvis or bladder if the process mentioned in 2b takes place too much? What is the process we mentioned here children? Selective reabsorption. If selective reabsorption takes place too much, what will happen? If continuously too much of selective reabsorption is taking place, then urine output decreases. When the urine output decreases, for a long time, little amount of urine is retained in the pelvis of the kidney and also in the bladder. When urine is retained for a long time, urine gets concentrated more in the bladder or the pelvis. When the urine get concentrated, children, some salts like calcium oxalate can crystallize in bladder or in the pelvis. This is called calculi, formation of calculi in bladder or pelvis. This is also commonly called as bladder stones or kidney stones. So, if this process occurs too much, then the problem we get is calculi in bladder, formation of calculi, stones in bladder. Okay, right. Then we are moving to the next question children. Acids are used in laboratories and in the kitchen for different purposes. We know that, right? Name a strong acid mostly used in the school lab and an acid found in the kitchen. First we will go to the acids available in school lab. Strong acids are sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, nitric acid, right? Strong acids. Then what are the acids used in the kitchen? Acetic acid, citric acid. You know what's acetic acid children? Vinegar. We use in the kitchen for the preparation of food vinegar. In vinegar, the main acid contains in vinegar is acetic acid. Citric acid is normal lemon juice, citric acid. So, these are the acids available in the kitchen, right? Okay. Now, look at here. Some bottles without labels contain aqueous solutions of copper sulfate, potassium permanganate, hydrochloric acid and sodium hydroxide. A magnesium strip is put into each solution. Some observations made are given in the following table. Look at here children. There are 5 blank spaces as well. You have to fill these 5 blank spaces A, B, C, D, E at the end. right? Before filling, we'll study the table first. See, the solution A, we don't know what the solution A, right? Color is blue. If the color is blue, children, now we can identify the solution A. Solution A must be copper sulfate, right? Okay. Then it says, does it react with magnesium? Copper sulfate solution? Yes. And does the reaction produce a gas? Yes. Right? Then look at the second row states the solution dilute hydrochloric acid. We know that when a piece of magnesium is put into dilute hydrochloric acid, hydrogen gas is released, right? Therefore, and also we know that dilute hydrochloric acid is colorless, no color. Then does it react with magnesium? Yes. Then does the reaction produce a gas? Yes. Then for the B blank also, you have to write yes. Then look at C. We don't know what the solution is, but fourth solution is given as sodium hydroxide. Now we have recognized 3: copper sulfate, dilute hydrochloric acid and sodium hydroxide out of the 4 given. Then what should come for the blank C? The remaining solution, potassium permanganate. Then for the blank C, the solution must be potassium permanganate. Then what's the color of it? You know, potassium permanganate is Condis. It is generally commonly called Condis. Color of the Condis solution? Purple. Then for blank D, the term purple must be written. Then does it react with magnesium, potassium permanganate? No. Then no gas is produced. Finally, when you take sodium hydroxide, children, it's a base. It doesn't react with magnesium. Normally bases do not react with metals, right? Then no gases produced. Then we'll go to the answers. A, copper sulfate. B, yes. C, potassium permanganate. D, purple. E, no. Because sodium hydroxide doesn't react and no gases emitted. Right. Go to the next question, children. Write the balanced chemical equation for the reaction between magnesium and dilute hydrochloric acid. This is a most common reaction. We have written so many times, children. Let me show you how to write the balanced equation between these two reactants. Here, when magnesium is reacted with dilute HCl, what are produced? Magnesium chloride plus hydrogen gas. How to balance this equation, children? As there are 2 chloride ions and 2 hydrogen here, you have to put 2 for this. Then the reaction is balanced. This is the balanced equation for the reaction between magnesium and hydrochloric acid. Next question, go to the next question. pH values of some solutions are given in the following table, right? Here you can see the pH values are given, children. You know that according to the normal pH chart starts from 0 to 14, goes until 14. From 0 to 6, pH numbers are assigned for acids. You know that, right? If I write it here, children, when you start from 0 to 6, acids, and pH 7 goes for neutral solutions, neutral substances like water, and from pH 8 to 14, bases, completely bases. You know that when you go towards 0 from 6, strong acids are found. Therefore, when the pH number is decreased, the strength of the acid increases. So, out of the solutions given here, what is the strongly acidic solution? The one with least pH value must be the strong acid. Then the answer C, least pH value. Which color litmus paper gives a color change when immersed in this type of solution? The solution is acid, acidic solutions. In acids, blue color litmus papers change into red color. Therefore, which color of litmus papers change? Blue litmus. Okay, children. Now, look at the next question. Atomic numbers of some elements are given in the following table. Use them to answer the questions given below. Given symbols are not the real symbols, not the standard symbols, right? Which elements given in the table belong to the same group of the periodic table? Before answering this type of questions, children, you have to draw the periodic table quickly and insert the given elements into the relevant positions of the periodic table. See, here I have put the given elements with the atomic numbers into the periodic table. You also can try this quickly, right? You also can draw the periodic table, rough periodic table, and just insert the given elements. Okay. This is how the elements are inserted into the periodic table. Given elements based on their atomic numbers, right? Now it is easy to find the elements belong to the same group, right? It is completely clear, right? What are the elements belong to the same group here, children? A and E. Actual elements are lithium and sodium. When you answer by symbols A and E. Sometimes when these type of questions are given, children, in your O-level paper, remember, in bold letters it is mentioned near the question that answer using the given symbols only. Then you have to give your answer only by using the given symbol. Don't write answers with the real symbols of them. Okay. If it is not mentioned specifically, you can go to the real symbols too. No problem. Right. Next. Which element belongs to period 2 and group 4? Here in this periodic table, children, this is period 2. Period 2. Group 4 is this. Then what is the answer? B. B is the answer. Real element is carbon. Which element does not take part in any reaction? We know that noble gases or the elements in group 8 do not take part in any reaction because they are inactive elements, less reactive elements, because they have stable electronic configurations. Therefore, which is the noble gas here? The noble gas is D or neon. Next, write the electronic configuration of the element mentioned in 3. Which is the element we mentioned in the third question, children? D or neon. Then electronic configuration of neon is 2,8. You know that atomic number of neon is 10. Then the electronic configuration is 2,8. Right? Then next one. Explain why it does not take part in any reaction. Why it doesn't react chemically with other atoms because it has a stable electronic configuration, right? Its last energy level is completed, then it doesn't like to exchange electrons with any other. That's the reason. Okay, children? Right. Then we'll move to the next question. Which element reacts vigorously with cold water? You know that sodium is the metal available in our school lab that reacts vigorously with cold water. Then here also the sodium element is given in this table. E is represents sodium, then the answer E, or sodium. Draw the Lewis structure of molecule formed by two atoms of G. Actually, what is G here, children? G is here. This C is really chlorine, right? When two chlorine atoms join together, they join with a covalent bond to form the chlorine molecule, Cl2 molecule. Then how to draw the Lewis structure of the Cl2 molecule or G2 molecules? If two atoms are joined, G2. This is how Cl2 or G2 molecule is formed, right? Gg in between Gg1 covalent bond and lone pairs of electrons. This is the Lewis structure of the chlorine molecule. Okay, right. Next question. Write the molecular formula of the compound formed by the combination of F and G. When we take F and G, here children, F is belong to the group 2, then the valency of F must be 2, and when you take G, G is group 7, valency of G is 1, then the formula formed between F and G equals Fg2. This is the answer for the formula formed between F and G. Then two atoms of C join and form C2 molecule. Relative molecular mass of C2 is 32. Find the number of molecules in 16 grams of C2. Okay, children. Now we'll move to the next question. Write the molecular formula of the compound formed by combination of F and G. Right. Here you know that children, F is belong to group 2. Group 2, therefore the valency of F must be 2. So we can write F valency 2. G is belong to group 7. So valency of G is 1. Then the formula is formed by exchanging their valencies. Therefore, the formula must be Fg2. This is the formula. Right. Now go to the next question. Two atoms of C. C represents here the given symbols, children, not carbon. C is the given symbol. This C, right? Two atoms of C join to form C2 molecule. Actually, what is C here, children? C represents oxygen. Therefore, when two oxygen atoms join, O2 molecule is formed, right? Now, it is given the relative molecular mass of C2 or O2 equals 32. Then we have to find the number of molecules in 16 grams of C2O2. Right, now we know that C2 is equal to O2. C2 is equal to O2. Relative molecular mass of this O2 is C2 is 32. That means number of molecules in 32 grams is the Avogadro number. Then we have to find number of molecules in 16 grams. 16 grams is half of 32. Therefore, number of molecules in 16 grams must be half of the Avogadro number. Half of the Avogadro number. Then the answer, number of molecules in 32 grams is Avogadro number. 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 is the Avogadro number of molecules. This is the amount of molecules present in 1 mole or in the relative molecular mass 16. The number of molecules in 16 gram means half of 32. That means half of the Avogadro number. This is the answer. Okay, children, right. Now move to the next. The diagram shows heating of solid wax. The graph shows the variation of the temperature when heating solid wax, right? State the physical state of wax in following instances. Carefully look at the graph, children. You know that if this is solid wax, when it is heated, its temperature increases and increases, and at B, even the heat is supplied, even the time is passing, temperature doesn't rise. That means this must be the melting point of wax. So at this time, wax starts to melt. Therefore, in between A, B, the physical state of wax must be solid state. After B, it starts melting. Then some part of wax can be melted and part of wax can be in the solid state during BC. Therefore, physical state of wax in between BC must be solid and liquid both. Then after melting all, here at C, melting is completed. Then all wax, solid wax have melted, and after that, in the time period between C and D, children, the physical state of wax must be liquid only. Right. Here, the next question, how do you determine the melting point of wax used in the graph? As I told you at the start of the question, children, melting point start from B because even the heat is supplied, no change in temperature is shown in between B and C. Then B must be the melting point of wax. Right. This is the answer, children. Even when heated, no change in temperature between B and C, so that must be the melting point. Next question. Even when continuously heated, no change in temperature is observed between B and C. What is called the heat supplied during this time period? Children, heat supplied during this time period is the latent heat. it is really latent heat of fusion. Latent heat of fusion. Right. Then move to the next part of the same question. D shows the boiling point of wax. Show in this graph itself how temperature varies after that. If D here is the boiling point, children, you know that even at the boiling point, the liquid starts boiling, the heat is absorbed to convert liquid state into gaseous state. That heat is called latent heat of vaporization. During this period, temperature doesn't change. Then it goes like this after that. Then the graph must be drawn like this. Next question. If 200 grams of wax was used in this experiment, find the amount of heat needed to heat wax from 40 to 50 Celsius. Right here the specific heat capacity of wax also given. How to get the heat absorbed here, children? The equation is, you know that heat change is calculated by Q equals mc theta. M is the mass, say specific heat capacity, and theta is the temperature difference. Temperature difference here is 40 to 50, 10 degrees. Mass of heat, mass of wax used here is 200 grams. Then you have to divide this by 1000 to convert it into kilograms. Specific heat capacity is 2800. Temperature change here is 40 to 50, 10. Right? Then what's the answer? Two zeros can be cut. The next zero also can be cut. Then answer 2800 into 2. 2800 into 2 is 5600 joules. This is the quantity of heat. Okay. Next question. Diagrams show an image of an object formed by a converging lens and a diverging lens, children. You know, converging lens is a convex lens. Diverging lens is a concave lens. Right. Select the converging lens from A and B. Converging lens here is A. How do we decide this, children? You know that when you observe carefully the A diagram, children, you know that this is relevant to observe in a small thing using a hand lens, right? A virtual magnified image is formed on the same side of the object is only by a convex lens. Therefore, the converging lens here must be A. Okay, right. Next, state whether the images I1, I2 are real or virtual. Children, here both I1, I2 images are virtual. Both are virtual. Why? Because when the image is formed on the same side to the object, that image cannot be taken onto a screen. That's why the image is said virtual. And also by the way that the light rays are intersected, when they are extended backwards, also it gives an idea about the image, and that also gives us a virtual image. Okay, children, then this is the answer. You can see the way in which light rays intersect or how they meet when extended backwards gives us that these two images are virtual. Right, okay. Next question. Where is the object placed in front of lens A to get the image given, children? Where is the object placed in front of lens A? Normally, if the object is placed inside the focus of the lens, that means in between the focus and the lens, only we get an upright, enlarged virtual image like that. Therefore, the object must be placed in between the focus and the optical center of the lens, or focus in between the focus and the lens. Right, children? Then, name a practical instance where lens A forms an image as shown in the diagram. The practical instance is, as I told you at the start, in the magnifying glass or hand lens, or it is also called as simple microscope. Next, write two properties of the image formed when object O1 is placed at X. Here, children, if I draw the convex lens relevant to the lens A here, look at here. If this is the convex lens, this is focus F and twice of the focus 2F. If the object is placed in between focus and the lens, we get an image like that. Upright, virtual, enlarged image. Here X place is somewhere here. X. If the object is placed here, children, this is how the image is formed. See, parallel light ray passes through the focus, and the next ray goes through the optical center, intersects somewhere here like this. This must be the image. Then, what are the characteristics of the image formed here, children? It is inverted, enlarged, magnified, and real, because this image can be taken onto a screen. If you keep a screen here, this image can be taken onto a screen, children. Therefore, these are the characteristics: magnified, inverted, real. Okay. Then move to the next question. Two ways in which particles vibrate in mechanical waves are shown in the diagram. What do you call the mechanical waves in which particles vibrate in the direction of CD? See, here in this particular wave, children, particles are vibrated perpendicularly to the direction of the wave. Then this must be a transverse type of wave. Here in this figure, CD, particles are vibrated parallel with the direction of the wave. If the particles are vibrated parallel, that should be longitudinal type of waves. Therefore, what do you call the mechanical wave like CD? Longitudinal waves, right? Then, state an instance where particles vibrate in the direction AB. As I told you, when the particles are vibrated perpendicularly to the direction of the motion of the wave, it's a transverse type wave. Then, as an example for a transverse wave, we can have water waves or transverse waves formed in a string. When a stretched string is vibrated, children, this type of waves are generated. It's a type of transverse type of waves. Okay. Then look at the next question. Out of ABCD, which shows the vibration of particles which propagate sound. You know that longitudinal sound is a type of longitudinal waves, then the answer must be CD. Write two differences between the type of mechanical waves mentioned in 2 above and electromagnetic waves. Type of mechanical waves we mentioned in the previous question is water waves. Here you have to write a difference between water waves and the electromagnetic waves. Here are the differences between the mechanical waves and the electromagnetic waves. You can go through them, children. There are some more differences. Here I have used only 2 differences. Right, children? Okay. Then move to the next question. Diagrams show flowers in 2 pea plants. Out of P, Q, R and S, which belong to the Androecium. Here Androecium is R and S. You can see easily this R is the anther and S is the filament. You know anther and filament are belong to the Androecium. Name the methods of pollination given as X and Y. Children, X is self-pollination and Y is cross-pollination. Then next question. State whether flowers are more adapted for self-pollination or cross-pollination. Write the reason for your answer. Children, flowers are more adapted for cross-pollination or why? What's the reason? Because cross-pollination helps produce new plants with genetic variations. New plants with genetic variations. Okay, right. Move to the next. The flower in diagram 1 above produces green pods, while the flower in diagram 2 produces yellow pods. Green pods are homozygous dominant, while yellow pods are homozygous recessive. Show in the inheritance of pod color in the plant generation. F1 generation produced by the type of pollination Y. Y is cross-pollination, children. If G letter stands for green pods, we can have capital G for the green parents. Then simple G for the yellow parents. Then these are the gametes of them. Then what should be the F1 generation plants? Capital G simple G, capital G simple G, capital G simple G and capital G simple G. This is how F1 generation is produced. All F1 plants produce green pods. Look at the next question, children. Shown in a Punnett square, the inheritance of the pod color in F2. Here this is the Punnett square, children. You know how to make the Punnett square. This is the F1 parents. Here when these two join, capital G, capital G simple G, capital G and simple G. This is the Punnett square. Then write the phenotypic ratio obtained in F2. What are the phenotypes here, children? Green pods and yellow pods. Green and yellow. Phenotype ratio 3:1. Okay. This is the answer, children. Next, use the following diagram to answer the questions given here. What is the form of energy in water when stored in the reservoir, children? When water is stored in a higher reservoir, potential energy is stored, right? Explain why water in a reservoir at a higher place is used for the operation of the power station. Because when water is stored at a higher place, high potential energy, this high potential energy converts into a higher kinetic energy when it flows. Then high kinetic energy can be used to rotate turbines effectively, efficiently. This is the final question. Energy transformation taking place in a hydropower station is given here. We have to fill in the blanks of the energy transformation. See, potential energy of water, then kinetic energy of water when it flows, then turbines are rotated, then kinetic energy of turbines. Finally, kinetic or mechanical energy of the dynamo when the dynamo is rotated, and finally electrical energy is produced. Children, with that we completed our discussion today. I hope that you got a very good understanding of the concepts that you need to face your exam successfully. Thank you for being with me, children. Goodbye.